Folks, I had no idea that there are three types of diabetes. I thought there were two. Now there's three. It seems it's called Alzheimer's diabetes because 60% of the people with that type of diabetes go on to develop Alzheimer's. Oh, amazing, right? How I wish they knew what we knew, that fungi can induce, this is published, Alzheimer's. And how do we give study animals diabetes? With mycotoxins, fungal metabolites. We'll talk about that today. My dear friend, Dr. Julia Schulenberg is here today to talk about epigenetics. We're going to talk about respiratory problems being linked to fungus, and then diabetes being linked to fungus. Then a special friend, Dr. Stillman, is going to be here to talk about cell phones and other things. Watch.
For the past 45 years, I have dedicated my life and my whole career to finding the root cause of disease. And I now know with certainty that we must play a role in our own health care. I'm a self-care advocate, and you know what? Every time you change your diet for the better, exercise, or swallow a nutritional supplement, so are you. Now welcome to Know the Cause.
Some of you folks may know I'm a Vietnam veteran. When I came home from Vietnam, one of my many symptoms was nasal. You know, I talked like that. I just had horrible sinus problems. Little did I know it was intimately linked with the alcohol I was consuming, the bread, the pasta, etc. Folks, in 1999, as a matter of fact, September 9th, 9999, the Mayo Clinic published an article that literally 98% of this that was going on in my sinuses were linked to fungus. Of course, I knew that because I helped fix it with antifungal nose sprays, okay? And that was back many years before. So let's talk about what causes breathing or sinus disorders, okay? This is what causes breathing disorders. The cause of asthma is unknown, so says an eMedicine Health. Triggering factors like mold can be associated with asthma. You see, I happen to believe always work with your pulmonologist or your allergist. I believe most of what goes wrong up here or here in your lungs is mold, okay? Asthma and fungus, pulmonary and sinus fungal disease in non-immunocompromised patients. That's important. Non-immunocompromised means healthy. So lung and sinus fungal disease in healthy people. Many fungi are directly allergenic by colonization of the respiratory tract or indirectly through contact with the cell wall constituents and proteases, causing or exacerbating allergic diseases. Increasing evidence implicates high indoor fungal exposures as a precipitant of asthma in children with worsening asthma symptoms. All of that means is, gee, maybe Doug's right. Maybe Know the Cause knows this. And this was when, 2017, in a big journal, The Lancet, okay, talked about infectious diseases. You see, very often in science, we tend to say, well, these allergies spontaneously begin. That lump in the neck just spontaneously began. That prostate problem just spontaneously. I don't believe this, folks. There's always a precipitating factor, as they say in this article. And I think many times you'll find that if today you're miserable with, you probably slept in a basement. A loving grandma put you down there where the laundry room had flooded a few times, no big deal. We have to begin going backwards and thinking, why do I have breathing problems at 60 or 70 years old? Could it have been at 6 or 7 years old that you were exposed to a lot of mold? Antibiotics. Were you? Okay. What causes COPD? My mom had this, God rest her soul, had this so bad. What causes chronic obstructive pulmonary disease? COPD is commonly misdiagnosed. Ironically, so says the Mayo Clinic. The same clinic that said 21 years ago almost all chronic sinusitis problems are linked to fungus. By the way, they even found polyps that were taken out of the nose, had all sorts of varying fungi in the polyp. So colon polyps, you know, lumps, bumps that we get in our body, are those linked to fungus? What makes bread slowly rise? Yeast, right? Yeast is a single-celled fungus. Okay, so here's an article in PLOS One just a couple of years ago. Recent studies have shown that the microbiome, namely Aspergillus species fungi, play a previously unrecognized role in both stable and exacerbated chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So we're equating lung problems finally with this. Folks, when this is good, you heard me open this segment saying I used to drink a lot of beer when I got back from Vietnam. That was just the thing to do, and it It staved off all of my stress and my post-traumatic problems. This impacted this. So often it impacts pain, it impacts weight gain, it impacts all sorts of health problems, okay? If I had a breathing disorder, there's 4 things I do. I test my home for mold. Most hardware stores have Petri dishes that test for mold. I'd ask my doctor for diflucan and nystatin, 2 antifungal drugs. Look on my website under Getting Started. Go to the homepage, knowthecause.com, and pull down Getting Started, and there you'll see a letter that you can print off and take to your doctor that explain this scientifically. And if I had a breathing disorder, I'd begin following my own diet. Folks, fungi need to be starved out of your body. Yeah, we know what they eat. They got to have carbohydrates. They got to have pasta. They got to have breads. They got to have beer. They got to have alcohol. They got to have sugar in order to thrive. Begin starving them with the Kaufman diet. Now, am I better after 2 weeks on the diet and these drugs and or supplements? If the answer to that is yes, folks, you have been able to do what the doctors may not have been able to do. You've been able to figure out, oh my gosh, there might be a fungal component to my breathing problem. By the way, this goes far beyond just airways, all health problems. Will a diet starve it? Will antifungals help it? If they do, might be a fungal disorder. You know, I look at this and I think, without this, what did we do? Thank God these weren't available when I was dating. We can now track our kids and our grandkids on these things. We rely so much, folks. Now there's these towers that are being built. We hunker down for, the year 2020. You get out of bed 6 months later, we hibernate, we go outside, and there's all these new towers all over the place. Joining me right now is a physician you're going to fall in love with because I have. Leland Stillman is a physician, board certified in internal medicine. He's in Virginia, he's in New York, and we hope he's coming to Dallas, Texas. If I can woo him out here, that would be good. How much, Dr. Stillman, has technology changed the way medicine or good health are practiced?
Thanks for having me, Doug.
You bet.
I became aware of this problem as I was treating young people who had complex medical issues, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, intractable headaches, all of these medical issues that were not responding to the standard of care. And if you go out into the alternative or holistic, functional, natural wellness space, you'll find every kind of diet, and everyone's got a different supplement to sell you, and headache remedies and sleep remedies, and you name it, right? It's overwhelming the amount of information people have to deal with. And even as a physician, I struggled to keep up. What I found was that no matter what I did for certain patients, they were not getting better. And this led me to look into, thanks to the investigative efforts really of my patients who brought me the material to begin with, what was going on with technology and how it was affecting people's health. And most of us in medicine were not taught anything about how light affects our metabolism and our behavior in medical school because it, frankly, doesn't factor into most of what we do, surgery and pharmaceutical medicine. But it has a very profound effect on our physiology. And people just need to look out their window to see real examples of this. And they only need to look into how their eating habits and their habits change over the course of the year to see exactly how this works. When it's colder, we crave fat. Why? Because we burn fat for fuel to make heat. When it gets dark, we want to go to sleep. All of these factors drive our behavior as well as the animals outside. When they hibernate, when they migrate, what they eat, when they mate. These factors are critical. And so when you're not focusing on them, at least part of your clinical picture, you can really run into serious roadblocks with getting people better. And the main things that I work with my patients on are fixing their visible lighting environment. In other words, making sure that they're getting adequate sunlight, because we need bright light in order to have a healthy and appropriate mood and affect. We need to be getting sunlight to build vitamin D, particularly ultraviolet, specifically ultraviolet type B light. When we're not getting that kind of light, we want to be getting our vitamin D from foods like fish. So it's important to know what your patient's latitude is and how much sun they're getting. And then with visible light, people can get loaded with blue and green at night, which will disrupt their circadian rhythms. This ruins their sleep architecture. This leads to problems with mood, problems with hormones, lots of other issues that are downstream from these effects. And when you get people into a more naturalistic lighting environment, suddenly you see a lot of their problems begin to ameliorate and eventually disappear. And the other piece of this that people don't appreciate is the effect of light that we can't see. And this is things like the cellular radiation from our cell phones or wireless routers. I've been shocked by patients telling me that their headaches went away when they stopped using their wireless headphones, or their sleep improved when they started unplugging their wireless router at night, or their nightmares went away. And I could go on, and there's way more to it than I can get to, in the time we have today. But it really impressed upon me the importance of paying attention to the patient's total environment and how they're using technology in their day. Then the last piece of this is really what kind of media are they tuning into? And if people are tuning into, really toxic, negative messages all the time, it's going to have a terrible effect on their mental health. This will trickle into their relationships, their business, their hobbies. All of a sudden, they'll be a different person just because of the information that's coming at them through their phone or their laptop.
Such good information. I now have grandchildren who are affixed to this. The good news is mom and dad say you got 5 minutes in the morning when you get up, and that's going to be it. We're going to go outside and throw a ball. Dr. Stillman's an interesting kind of guy, folks. He believes in the mind-body relationship. As a matter of fact, his partner in New York is a psychiatrist. He's an internal medicine specialist, and I hope he brings that same mentality to Dallas, Texas. It's really, really important that you know when this is bad, this can be bad also, right? So we teamed up with a great doctor there. Dr. Stillman, thank you so much for your time and your brilliance. We really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you for having me.
You betcha. We'll have you again.
I was trying to find a year that we wrote this book. Dr. Dave Holland and I wrote this book, The Fungus Linked to Diabetes, 17 years ago. Wow, 2003. The Fungus Linked to Diabetes is really cutting edge, folks. It talks about what endocrinologists, what doctors don't know. And 20 years ago was a long time. They certainly didn't know at that time. I wonder how many endocrinologists suspect a fungal component to diabetes, given what I'm going to teach you right now. Remember, I have 5 minutes, so I got a lot of work, a lot of ground to cover here. There's actually 3 types of diabetes. Insulin dependent, to regulate blood sugar. Insulin dependent is type 1 diabetes. Number 2, most common, used to be called adult onset, but now many children have it, so it's called type 2 diabetes. Isn't that amazing? Change the name instead of trying to discover the cause. And then number 3, we call Alzheimer's diabetes. I had no idea, since up to 60% go on to develop Alzheimer's. Also called gestational diabetes because it develops during pregnancy. This is called type 3 diabetes. I have done many seminars talking about neurotoxins, antibiotics, alcohol in our body, predisposing us to Alzheimer's disease. So I don't think it's coincidental at all that Alzheimer's and diabetes are linked. Could your diabetes be linked to fungus? So is there a fungal link to diabetes? Consider the following. You may agree that there is. I just want to show you a couple of studies. We'll do it very quickly. You can always go back to our website and watch this show again. Researchers induce diabetes in study animals, or do they? 2 mycotoxin antibiotics called baflomycin, streptozotocin are inoculated over a period of time into diabetes study animals. Then they manifest with the symptoms of diabetes. Yet what they actually have medically is called a chronic mycotoxicosis because we've injected mycotoxins into their body. But that is not what these study animals are diagnosed with. They're diagnosed with diabetes. The scientists didn't give them sugar. They gave them fungus. Does fungus cause diabetes? I mean, it begs thinking about it, doesn't it? I mean, if your doctor, many doctors attend these seminars that I give, and I'm so enthralled with their response. They either want to stand in line and talk to me, gosh, you're kidding, because my diabetic patients crave sugars, carbs, okay? Do antibiotics increase your risk of diabetes? The effect of past antibiotic exposure on diabetes risk, so says the European Journal of Endocrinology. And get this quote, treatment with 2 to 5 antibiotic courses was associated with increase in diabetic risk, penicillins, cephalosporin, macrolides, and quinolones. These are different kinds of antibiotics, and it pretty much covers all of them. 2 to 5 antibiotic rounds increases the risk of diabetes. Antibiotics are mycotoxins. They're fungal metabolites. So we give people fungus just like the study rats. We give people mycotoxins, and their blood sugar goes awry. Their beta cells begin breaking. Gee, I wonder if fungus can do that. Let's keep going. There's a type of drug, class of drugs called glitazones. Glitazone diabetes drugs actually kill fungus. Have you taken Actos niveaudia? These are glitazone drugs. An Indian study done about, 10 years ago, proved that some of these drugs exhibited remarkable antifungal activity, while a 2011 Tennessee study declared that glitazone showed the ability to inhibit fungal growth compared to the antifungal drug diflucan. How many people are taking diabetes drugs, and the way they work, they happen to kill fungus? It's like depressed people taking selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, that just happen to kill fungus. Think about that, folks. If I had diabetes, here's what I'd do. I think about my fungal exposure. Did you just sleep at grandma's house in the basement that leaked from time to time? Or antibiotics, how many have you been on? 2 to 5 in your life? Mold in the home or office? Alcohol? Eating cereal grains and peanuts, craving those, a lot of pasta, a lot of bread. If fungus might be involved, I'd talk to my doctor about mold exposure and doing some lab tests to confirm or deny it. They can do urine, blood tests, serum tests, etc. If positive, know that fungi require both starving and stopping or killing. And there are drugs that stop fungus from growing, and there are drugs that kill fungus. Together with the diet, starving it out of your body and killing it makes good sense to me. Talk to your doctor. You know, it always gives me great pleasure to introduce you to my guest right now. Dr. Julia Schulenberg is a person we've leaned on several times, or even with Berkeley, who fell in love with you, by the way, my grandson of 6 years old. Dr. J, as we affectionately call her, has her BS in nursing. She's a nurse. She is also a certified lymph therapist. She is also a naturopathic doctor, and she's right here in Dallas. And so we send our friends over to see her and thank you. Boy, do we get just amazing emails from them. I want to talk to you today in the next 5 minutes about something you brought up several times on this show, and you need more time. We are told that our cancer, our arthritis, our depression so often is genetic. Mom and dad had it, or grandpa had it, you're going to have it. And yet genetics plays a role, we're now told, in 5 to 10% of all cancers. Well, I'm not a 5% guy, I'm a 95% guy. What's the other 95%? Epigenetics, I think you explain it better than anyone else, might be that other 95%.
Right, and I'll say right now that I'm not an expert in genetics, but I did do some study, some of the research that Amy Yasko did many years ago on genetics, and I learned about the metabolics, pathways, the methylation pathways, and the methylation blocks, and the sulfation pathways, and all of that. But then when I've read more about epigenetics and also how our biology is affected by our beliefs, our thoughts, and our environment. Wow. I really caught on to that, and I had listened to some research by Sungjul Ji, which is the father of Sayer Ji, and he's from South Korea, and he explained epigenetics in a way that I really understood. And he said, think of your genetic panel as sheet music, okay? So you have the phenotypes, you have the genotypes, and you have maybe about, several thousand genes that they tested for. But out of that several thousand, we have what? About 100,000, way over 100,000 different genes, but we're only tested for a few thousand, okay? But then here on a piece of paper, we have this genotypes and the phenotypes and everything that could be wrong with us, okay? That's the sheet music, okay? And then we have the musician. And what we hear audibly depends upon the interpretation of that sheet music from the musician, right? So now, who is that musician? That musician is going to be influenced by his own beliefs, his environment, and his training, and his internal environment, his external environment. That's all a matter of interpretation. So that then, what you have then is the expression of the sheet music. So then you have gene expression. You have the expression of the genes. Those genes are expressed depending on the internal environment of the individual and the external environment of the individual. So the internal environment of the individual is influenced by maybe the toxicity in their bodies, the pathogenic organisms that's in their bodies, because there's all this symbiotic relationship inside of them. And it's also affected also by their belief system, their thought processes. Then you have the external environment, okay? And the external environment may be the electromagnetic radiation. The external environment could be the foods, or the drinks, the socioeconomic environment, and their support system. That's just to name a few. But all of this is going to affect the expression of that sheet music, the expression of the genes. So we can't just look at just the piece of paper that says this is your genetics and this is what we need to do. We need to look at all the internal environment, we need to look at their external environment, we need to look at their thought processes, their belief systems, and see how their genes are expressing.
You just made a case for God. I mean, really, the conductor. You know,
Yes.
I mean, it's really, thank you for doing that. By the way, folks, this is a shorter way of saying that. What mom and dad handed to you, the sperm and the egg, became your genetic profile. What you do with it via exercise, proper diet, your spiritual life, etc., becomes your epigenetic profile. Thank you so much, Dr. J. Good to see you again. Thanks for coming in. You bet. Folks, you're beginning to get the idea that almost everything is linked to fungus. You don't know this, but it's pretty well documented that a couple million people a year die from fungal conditions. And that's not the diabetes, the cancer, the other conditions I think often have a fungal cause, right? That's just people who die and they saw the fungus and said, well, there's 1.5 million, 2 million of those. And we talked today about diabetes and Alzheimer's and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, asthma, etc. But really, fungus has tentacles that reach out very, very far. I think in medical training, doctors get this much education on bacteria, this much on virus, and very little, if any, on mycology, the study of fungus. Thank you so much, Dr. Stillman, for being here today, and thank you so much, Dr. Julia Schulenberg, for being here today. There are doctors, folks who veer a little bit away from what they learned during their medical training, and I love to bring these doctors to you. We know there are electromagnetic fields associated with cell phones. Now you know you have a button there that says speaker. God bless you. Tell a friend to know the cause. We'll see you later. Bye-bye.